Mark this date because on Wednesday, July 16, Ferrari will test the new rear suspension on the Mugello track paired with the bottom that we have already seen in Austria. And it's a crucial test for Ferrari because it will determine the second part of the season. We'll see if the new package is approved from the Belgian Grand Prix onwards. In this video, we'll examine the test details. We need to discuss the latest updates on Kimi Antonelli's situation with Mercedes. Let's also look at Vasseur's renewal, who wants to stay in Ferrari for another 2 years. Finally, let's look behind the scenes at the Christian Horner issue and Max Verstappen. Before we start, please leave a supportive like. And now let's look at everything in detail. The development work has been slowed down by the complexity of the gearbox attack and the structural constraints of composite materials. And all this has finally led to a solution that has given positive feedback in dynamic bench simulations. Now the real verification on the track is needed, and the direct feedback from Leclerc and Hamilton on the Ferrari's rear suspension. In fact, this new suspension aims to reduce the SF25's sensitivity to ground height, essentially expanding the setup options and improving the tire usage window. Together with the updated bottom, as we also said last week, the expected effect is about a 1/10 per lap. Little, but enough to defend the second position in the Constructors' World Championship and to take advantage of any missteps by McLaren. Mugello represents the last check before sending the material to Spa. And Ferrari aims to make the most of the package before focusing on the next single-seater, the 678, designed for the new 2026 regulations. The team hopes that this evolution allows them to fight for at least one seasonal victory. After Silverstone, where the SF25 showed clear limitations, the Tuscan test will have to clarify whether the season can end with some concrete satisfaction. This is one of Ferrari's most crucial tests of the year, because it will help to clarify whether the updated rear suspension will give the hoped-for results on the track or not. Will this update be approved for the future as well? Let's remember that the mechanical changes will also apply to 2026, so this is also a study and development work for next year. And we can say that Ferrari is finally going to test the materials at Mugello and not at Fiorano. Importantly, we have always watched the films during the day at Fiorano. Rightly so, because it is Ferrari's home track, but a more simulative track, which gives real feedback on the tests that are done. On the single-seater, Mugello, with its numerous elevation changes and fast curves, is where the maximum potential of the single-seater can be seen and expressed. Because there's a very long straight, because it's a modern track for its characteristics. So this choice of Ferrari should not be overlooked. It was specifically made to test the maximum level of the new rear suspension and how it manages to react based on different ground clearances. Obviously, the goal is to make the aerodynamic platform as stable as possible under any condition. But in addition to the mechanics, some aerodynamic innovations have also been introduced. In fact, there have been aerodynamic modifications to the rear suspension arms to optimize the interaction between flows and kinematics. The dynamic bench test simulations did not give negative feedback, but they also did not fully meet expectations. The OXR-led team decided to verify everything on the track during the filming day, utilizing the available kilometers. In fact, the substantial modification concerns the positioning of one or more arms of the rear system. The goal is to reduce squat and lowering during acceleration and improve the management of ride height, therefore the ground clearance at every stage of driving. In combination with the new floor, the package should make the aerodynamic window more effective and also expand the setup range of the single-seater, allowing both Hamilton and Leclerc to use different setups and still have optimal performance. The repositioning of the arms also required a touch-up of the carbon covers, now treated as true aerodynamic elements. Ferrari has studied an approach that McLaren successfully implemented, yielding tangible benefits from similar interventions. This sums up the rear suspension. The benefits will be evident on the tracks at Mugello and Spa, and we will comment on it together. However, this is Ferrari's first major update after the bottom in Austria, which needs to try to change the fortunes of this season. But we also have to talk about Vasseur's situation because he wants a 2-year renewal while Ferrari only gives 1. The trust in the main French team has worn thin and it will hardly be able to return to the initial levels. The central issue is the possible arrival of Antonelli Coletta, today a key man in the World Endurance Championship project, whom Elkann would also like to involve in Formula 1. Coletta knows the Ferrari environment well, but he knows that accepting the role of team principal would compromise a long process of rebuilding, difficult to digest, without a clear message of restart. If Coletta were to accept, for Vasseur, it would be the end of the Formula 1 experience at the natural end of the contract. Currently, Ferrari has no immediate replacements for Vasseur. No substantial talks have been held with Horner or anyone else. Ferrari offered Vasseur a single-year extension for 2026, indicating a lack of trust. The Frenchman, however, prefers a minimum 2-year deal for guarantees and continuity. From my point of view, it's right to confirm Vasseur at least for 2026, to give him a chance to demonstrate what he has built over these years with the technicians he himself has chosen. For example, Luke Serra, his right-hand man, his deputy Jerome D'Ambrosio. We need to see what he can build with his men. For Ferrari's new era, it is appropriate to be somewhat skeptical about the future, as Vasseur has been disappointing so far. Considering the failure cycle from 2023 to 2025, we can evaluate last year and this year, as the 2023 car was not his. However, it must also be said that Vasseur has not solved the problems at Ferrari, and not all of Ferrari's problems depend on him. So, from my point of view, Ferrari's decision to renew Vasseur for a year and then evaluate his work is correct. Meanwhile, Vasseur seeks a 2-year contract for added security, which is typical in such situations. However, we know how the timelines at Ferrari are always very tight. Results need to be achieved immediately in a short time. If you were in management's position, would you renew Vasseur's contract for 1 or 2 years? But let's also see the mistake that Ferrari must avoid for next year. Ferrari's 2025 has confirmed a fundamental concept. There are no custom cars in Formula 1. What makes the difference is the competitiveness of the single-seater, not how much it adapts to a driver's preferences. As I've always said, even Max Verstappen must adapt to the car, not the other way around. If the car is winning, these discussions don't even arise. The Hamilton-Ferrari case proves it. Upon arriving at Maranello, Lewis tried to gain confidence through setups more similar to his usual style, but the result did not change. The limit is not in adapting the SF25 to him, but in the need for both Hamilton and Leclerc to adapt to the car and make the most of it despite its flaws. So it's not the driver who imposes his driving style on the single-seater, but a single-seater that is born with certain characteristics. The driver must adapt to the car's characteristics. Drivers who adapt more easily can push the limits further. Leclerc has been working on this approach for some time, adapting his driving to the limits of the technical package just to push it to the limit. With the 2026 regulatory change approaching, Ferrari must prioritize building the highest performance single-seater possible. Suggestions to drivers are important, but secondary to the project's success. Developing the future Ferrari based on Hamilton or Leclerc's needs would be misguided. Drivers make the difference when the technical base is competitive, not the other way around. And this is crucial, because it's true that the Ferrari this year is difficult to drive. It's very nervous at the
rear. However,
we see that over the course of the season, the drivers adapt to the single-seater, creating custom setups based on their needs. However, you shouldn't adapt the single-seater to the driver's needs at the start of the season. Because in this way, you can't build the fastest possible car, and on the grid, you end up being less competitive. Let's look, for example, at Aston Martin. Aston Martin's last notable performance was in Canada, 2023. But for the past 2 years, it's been struggling to reach the limit. It's an easy car to drive, it meets the needs of the drivers, but it's not the most competitive car on the grid. Ferrari should emulate McLaren and Red Bull's approach rather than following Aston Martin's path to avoid potential pitfalls. Now let's also talk about Kimi Antonelli. Why do we need to do a recap of his season and his future? Kimi Antonelli's debut Formula 1 season is more challenging than anticipated. Despite a strong debut, the Italian rookie has faced challenges, including mechanical issues, collisions, and novice errors in recent races. Despite the fluctuating results and the 4 seasonal retirements, Mercedes has decided to stick with him, reaffirming their faith in his growth trajectory. After his impressive 4th-place debut in Australia and podium in Montreal, Antonelli faced technical issues like the failure at Imola, broken engine in Spain, race contacts especially with Verstappen in Austria, and poor strategic decisions, such as at Silverstone. The result is shaken confidence and decreased performance, but for Toto Wolff, the balance sheet must be read with equilibrium. Antonelli has shown talent and maturity and just needs time to grow, according to Toto Wolff, who defends him, saying not to force it. For Antonelli, the key is not letting negative results or expectations influence him. Mercedes has decided to set the Belgian Grand Prix as a key stage, aiming to reverse the trend before the summer break. The team will keep investing in the driver's development, knowing the talent exists but must be managed to avoid burnout. In a Formula 1 that requires instant results. Antonelli's challenge is not only technical, but also mental, and I dare say primarily mental, as he is only 18 years old. It's normal for him to make mistakes due to inexperience, but he needs to ensure that these mistakes do not affect his mentality and his psychological pressure. And in Brackley, they are determined to protect him without deadlines and without haste. After the contact with Agira at Silverstone, Antonelli said, "It seems like everything is going wrong. I'm not having a good time. Too many zeros. I need to try to focus and get out of this tunnel. And we need to try to support Kimi in his growth journey." As I mentioned, at just 18, it's expected for him to make errors due to inexperience. We should not put pressure on the Italian driver, and Mercedes is right to defend him. With these words, Toto Wolff has essentially secured him for several more years, and he wants to keep him at Mercedes, alongside whom we will know shortly whether it will be Russell or Verstappen. Mercedes recognizes that Kimi Antonelli plays a crucial role in the team's future. So supporting their own driver even in the most difficult moments is crucial. Also, to prevent him from falling into a psychological tunnel that could lead him to make more mistakes than expected. Instead, he must always be optimistic and positive about the results on the track, because he must consider that these years here are for gaining experience. And it's not so much the result itself that matters, but the experience he gains at Mercedes, which can be crucial for faster growth in the future. And after Monterey's success at Mercedes, it seemed ready to rise again. However, in Austria and Silverstone, they displayed significant limitations, struggling with balance, critical tire management, and the driver's lack of confidence in fast corners. In Austria, tire degradation compromised the race, and the V16 finished more than a minute from the top. At Silverstone, the situation did not change. Not even the cooler temperatures helped to save the qualifying, with Russell fourth more for an extreme lap than for real competitiveness of the car. Bradley Lord, head of communication at Mercedes, said there are aspects to clarify, especially on how drivers manage to push in fast corners and which setup to choose. For Spa, Mercedes has confirmed that updates will arrive for Spa and Budapest, even though the sprint weekend in Belgium will leave little margin to test the new features. The goal remains to consolidate the position in the constructors and return to a stable podium area, with the awareness that a clear response is needed even before the summer break. And this is an important issue for both Mercedes and Ferrari, which are the two teams that will bring more updates before the summer break. We need to see if everything will debut in Belgium, with the sprint weekend, therefore, where you only have free practice, one to set up, and then the Parc Fermé is reopened after the sprint race. However, be careful that the substantial updates that these two teams want to bring will affect the course of the weekend. And if you don't have enough time to have a setup ready for the race, especially on a track like Spa, which is very complete and very difficult to tackle, you risk getting screwed. So be careful to bring important updates. They must be sure of their effectiveness. But let's look at the real reason for Horner's departure from Red Bull, because other news has come out about it. Horner was at the top of 6 Red Bull United Kingdom companies, with a salary of £20.6 million in 2023, the contract until 2030. This makes it a delicate case even at a financial level. And meanwhile, the 2% share has passed to Fides Trastis, a Swiss trust company that has raised suspicions about a technical transfer, or a sign of the Jovidia family's withdrawal from direct control. Following Mataschitz's death, Red Bull has been managed by a trio of executives. The power seems to be more in the hands of the Austrian board, and the ousting of Horner could just be the first step of a new management era for the team. With the Thai family Jovidia's departure, who had consistently protected Horner, he seems to be distancing himself now that he has fallen. At Red Bull, we will see a Red Bull increasingly managed by Minzlaff, who is at the head of the management of the Austrian team, and less managed by the Thai side, which seems to be exiting the management. And on this situation of managerial chaos in Red Bull, Herbert drops the bomb. For Verstappen, it's the right time to leave Red Bull. In fact, Johnny Herbert said, "All drivers are always looking for the best place to win. Max is aware of this, as Mercedes would have already approached him with an offer to join their team. And according to the former English driver, Red Bull has given a lot in the past, but now seems to have taken a back seat. And the ball is now only in Verstappen's court, who has to decide about his future." And Jos Verstappen had stated, "I will put pressure on you, Christian," referring to Christian Horner. This all began with the heated argument between Christian Horner and Jos Verstappen in the Red Bull team after the Silverstone race. And we saw a few days later, on Wednesday, the announcement of Christian Horner's immediate departure. Paul Smith, Jos Verstappen, and Christian Horner were involved in a discussion at Silverstone. German press reports the decision was made in Austria, with the Silverstone discussion being the final key episode. Given the managerial chaos at Red Bull, if I were an investor, I would exit my position. Because there isn't just a problem with the car or at a technical level, but a real managerial problem with Red Bull itself. The team needs to be rebuilt from scratch. Ovidia will likely depart from management as well. And it seems that the Austrian part, that of Minzlaff, is gaining more and more power within Red Bull. But we also have to make a small digression on Goodwood. In fact, in the courtyard of the Goodwood house, one of the most romantic pages of this season was written. A photo that seems to have come out of a history book was actually taken. 7 Formula One world champions together in a single shot to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Premier Series. 7 legends, 14 world titles, 176 Grand Prix wins, gathered on that balcony that every fan has dreamed of seeing live at least once. We have Jackie Stewart, Emerson Fittipaldi, Mario Andretti, Nigel Mansell, Alain Prost, Jacques Villeneuve, and also Mika Hakkinen. Beside them on the balcony is 94-year-old Bernie Ecclestone, the man who built modern Formula One. And the Goodwood Festival this year has turned into a party. But also a clear message: the history of Formula One cannot be erased, and Goodwood remains the place where memory becomes spectacle. Among those present was Adrian Newey, who paraded on the track driving the Lotus 49B, the Leighton House, and the 69 Ferrari 312 Formula One. We also saw Stefano Kahn, Bottas, Berman Massa, Patrese, Butson, Ross Brown, and Gordon Murray. A cast that not even Liberty Media could ever have imagined, not even the best of films. And the Goodwood Festival has turned into a real Formula One circus. This year is especially significant as it marks the 75th anniversary of the top category. And it was wonderful to see so many Formula One legends gather together, celebrating what Formula One has given them, but also what they have given to Formula One. Let me know in the comments your opinion on every topic we covered in the video. As always, I remind you to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any Formula One and Ferrari themed news. That's all from Nasi. See you next time.